Hey everybody now, well, because of high demand, these tier list videos were something that I did, 2 or 3 years ago now. And because obviously we've had an album in between then, people have been asking, where's the Dark Matter tier list? Well, you don't have to look any further. The Dark Matter tier list is here. And I can't wait to do this because the tier list videos were so much fun. If you haven't watched any of them, I'll put a link in the comments and I'll probably put it at the end of the video as well. So there's a lot of material. We covered every single album plus covers and non-album songs and Lost Dogs and all that. So there's a lot of that to sift through. Christmas singles was another. But today we are going to be all about Dark Matter, as you can see here. All 11 Dark Matter songs are on the board. And just a little refresher for those of you who don't remember how I did the tier list last time. There are 4 categories here. Obviously, the S tier is the top tier. However, unlike most YouTubers, I decide that the S tier is for one song only. One song is going to get the super tier recognition that it deserves because that's how we do things. We want the best to be at the top, and we kind of do it a little bit dramatically too. We won't put it in at the beginning. That'll be the last thing we do is decide on a super tier song, especially I don't know what it's going to be right now. Usually, sometimes I know what's happening here. I don't know anything that's happening. So the first tier is obviously going to be pretty much your best of the best, the songs that really stick with you. And for a lot of this album, we've had a full tour under our belts now, 37 shows, and we kind of understand what these songs are live, as well as what they've done and how they've sunk in on the record as well. And the best ones outside of the one super tier will go in tier 1. Tier 2 will be kind of the middle tier, the ones that are pretty good, but they don't quite make the top. And then tier 3, kind of like the bottom rung. Nothing is absolutely horrible off this album, but there are ways to kind of separate, and we will separate. It'll be pretty even up on the numbers, so once we get into that, you'll see how we do things. Anyway, that's the boring stuff. Now let's talk about Dark Matter. So some of the storylines for this record. Obviously, I think the first big thing is that they're working with a new producer, Andrew Watt. And Andrew Watt came off of working on the Earthlings album, as well as being an Earthling himself. And the whole idea is that Andrew Watt was a massive Pearl Jam fan growing up. He's younger than me. That's saying a lot because I'm younger than the average Pearl Jam fan by about like 6 years or so, I would assume. Somewhere, I'm 38 right now. The average Pearl Jam fan probably comes out to be like 44, 45 or something like that. So I'm just below average, but Andrew Watt is like freshly in his 30s. But he comes with a lot of accolades. He's won Grammys with big artists, Post Malone, Miley Cyrus, Ozzy. He's done a lot, and they've called him a wonderkind very, very early on in his career. But like this always felt like a band that he wanted to do. And obviously being one of his favorites and growing up idolizing them, it's nothing but a dream come true, right? So he gets the band in, and immediately this album is all about just breaching comfort zone because they've gone in to do other albums before, mainly with guys like Brendan O'Brien, because he's the main producer that's been with them for a long time, done the main 90s records. But they came in, they kind of had an idea, like bring in your gear and write songs beforehand. And in this record, no, it was you're going in here. The only guy that was allowed to bring his own stuff was Matt. And everybody had to use equipment that was in the studio. And it made it challenging, but it seemed like from all the interviews that you hear from the band, they feel like it's a really rewarding experience. And that's why they seem to really like this record. And as we know right now, for those who care about this sort of thing, I'm not an award show guy, but this is up for a best rock performance hard rock Grammy. And that's just sort of how Andrew Watt makes records. And a lot of people, especially with the Earthlings record, said like it's a little too polished, it's a little too smooth. I think there are facets of that are dispersed throughout Dark Matter, but I think there's a lot of heavy stuff on the record where you can look past that a little bit. There are some songs where it does feel like they could easily make, and maybe not now because the pop music scene is so much different now, but in the early 2000s or the 90s, a song like Won't Tell could have easily made a top 40. That's that kind of song. Something Special, the same. Like that could have been a huge song for them in another era. We just don't know. But the landscape's a little bit different now, so it's not quite what they do. But a lot of these songs do bring you back to basic Pearl Jam. How many of these songs can you count and say McCready has a solo in this? And not just like a solo, it's a massive solo. He's a highlight in this. That was a big thing that Watt wanted to bring to the table on this. Jeff is very heavy. Matt's very heavy in this. Ed's vocals still very strong after all these years. This was a good record for that. And I think the themes of this record too, you got to think it's a lot about, I don't want to say loss because that would be kind of undercutting what it is, but I think it's a lot about having to deal with life as you grow and having to look back on the past a little bit and decide, okay, well, what is our future going to be? How are we going to shape our future? I think songs like Wreckage really speak to something like that. Setting Sun absolutely speaks to something like that. And Upper Hand is kind of one of those songs where you're looking back towards the past. I've always thought that it's written from the perspective of somebody that has their regrets after passing away and is sort of watching their own funeral unfold. That's just a thought that I've always had. It's not going to be everybody's thought, but it's just one thing. I know a friend of mine, she said that Setting Sun, she thought the line, "Am I the only one hanging on?" was in reference to all of the other lead singers from the 90s that have passed away, from Cornell to Cobain to Staley to even Mark Lanigan and other guys that are just not around anymore. And I think those are good things to think about. And the record really kind of touches up on a lot of these things and kind of brings a perspective that, you know, some of these later albums, and I'll go back to like Backspacer and Lightning Bolt, they wanted to bring more of a lighter touch to it and less sensitive subjects, but I like how they're still continuing to toy with stuff that, as you grow, gets more important as time goes along. So I think we'll get into more of that stuff as we go along here too. I think a lot of those songs have a lot of those themes, and we'll talk, you know, basically the rhyme or reason for picking which songs for which tier are kind of based off of a little bit of my personal, a little bit of how I feel the fan base thinks about these songs, and a little bit, actually a lot of it, of how these songs sound live and how much they've kind of resonated with the fan base on the live stage. And a lot of these songs were very, very good live. And we're about a couple of months away from finding out what the next era of Dark Matter is going to be. And there's some songs out there you're like, well, I'm not sure if they're going to bring this one into the future because they didn't really keep it around much in 2024 when they were supposed to be promoting it. So we'll get into that as we go, and I think we can kind of start. And the way that we're going to do that, obviously, is to go with the lead-off song here, Scared of Fear. I am a album opener guy. I love the album openers. From Go, Last Exit, Brain of J, I think those are three of the strongest songs in their entire catalog, let alone just as openers. And then you get stuff like Break or Fall, Life Wasted. I thought Whoever Said was a terrific song. Some of these have really resonated with people over time and became just huge favorites. And when I think of Scared of Fear, I think it is an apt opener for this record. I think it's a fun song. I think it's a good song. I think it gives you the dynamic that you want an opener and kind of explaining a little bit of what this album is going to be as well. You have that riff that comes out of the gate that Stone has. It's a very juicy riff. Obviously, we know kind of the progression. A few of their songs off the last couple albums have had that kind of lead up where there's some like little atmospheric stuff going on, and then you hear the pool cue, and then they get into that juicy riff. And it's a good song, and I think I wanted to see a little bit more of it live, in the sense that we got to this song, and I guess what happened on this tour this year was that everything managed to be so predictable in a way. Not every single night, but you kind of got that they were going for a formula. They'd play 4 or 5 songs at the beginning, and then once you see on the screen that kind of evolving sort of sun coming through, and you knew that video was coming with that sound effect that I was talking about, the atmospheric thing, you knew that Scare the Fear was coming. And that got rid of a little bit of the excitement to hear this song. I'm really looking forward to seeing in the future if that part is cut and we just go from song to song and we hear the riff right away. And I think that will help the song grow as we go, and it will take away from some of the just predictability factor. I have to go back and look. I'm not sure if the song was ever played after I think it was always the first Dark Matter song played in the set. If it was like the third or fourth, it happened like later in a main set. If it wasn't there, usually you'd kind of dig into React Respond first or something, but I want to see it moved around. I want to see what they can do with it and kind of make it a surprise a little bit. As far as the song goes, it's a good song. I would put it closer to the bottom rung of the openers in the Pantheon. I think it's not quite what something even like Whoever Said is to me. It's nowhere close to a Go or a Last Exit or a Brain of J, unfortunately. I don't know where I'm gonna put this just yet. I am gonna right now put it between 2 and 3. It's possible it can go into 2. I'm thinking it might end up going 3, which I don't think I've ever done with an opener before, but we'll see how it goes. You know, there's a lot to get to here, obviously, so we're going to kind of put that on ice for the time being, and now dig into song number 2, which is React Respond. React Respond was one off the record that right away, like, you feel the bass coming through. There's some crunchy riffs in there. And Ed has got a very interesting way of singing the song. And I remember one of the reviews very early on said that it kind of almost had like a rap rock feel to it, that he was more like speak singing it. And that's kind of accurate a little bit. And it has different throwbacks to all different types of genres. And I guess that you could say that. But on the album, very good. I enjoyed listening to it, but I think where it really thrived was live. And again, if you're not getting Scared of Fear in the set, like I said, React Respond would be that first one that pops up. And that build that it kind of has in the beginning, that like, it gets you kind of on your feet and excited for it. And then the song is just so upbeat and progressive, and the way that Ed is singing those vocals in the chorus like comes out of Vincent Price kind of horror movie kind of bit, and the song's very unique and I think has good staying power, to be honest with you. It felt like Mike was a huge standout on this when it came to the live setting. This was a phenomenal performance, especially in Philadelphia. I think that it might fall short of 1, but I think it's solidly in 2. That's what I'm going to say right now. Things can change. I'm going to keep things a little loosey-goosey here. Things can change, because usually how I do it is that there's 1 S tier, there's 4 in the 1, there's 3 in the 2, and 3 in the 3 for an 11-song list here for an 11-song album. So we'll see how it goes, but I have an idea of what else is gonna make the top stuff, and I think that's where we come into Wreckage right here. Personally, Wreckage, when it first came out, right before the album came out. I think this was out right before the record store listening parties and the theater listening experience that we had this on. And when it was a standalone song, I'm like, I'm not sure how I feel about it, because it's very Tom Petty. I was very critical of Long Way, which was an obvious Tom Petty collaboration there when it came to what he was doing off of Earthlings. And Wreckage had that similar vibe, but I don't think it goes full Tom. I think that it's enough to pay tribute and homage to it, but still very much uniquely Pearl Jam. The lyrical content of the song, I think, really hit for me. I knew a lot of people this past year that went through divorce, and a lot of people that I'm extremely close to, blood relatives, and, you know, this meaning of the song and where the perspective that it comes from, it put me in the sense of like understanding where my friends and family have been and sort of what's going on through their minds. And it's a song where you can look at it two ways. You can look at like, the Wreckage has totally destroyed everything, or we're going to get past the wreckage and we're going to pick up all of the trash off the beach and we're going to do it together. And I like to think that maybe it's the latter of that maybe it's a song where we're learning to put things aside and work as a team, but you kind of can't help but think of just sort of the mess in situations. And, you know, I won't get into things, but there's some very personal things that happened. But Wreckage, I'll just kind of transition to Wreckage Live. This was the only song off the record that they played at all of their shows, all 37. They did not take a break from Wreckage at all. I remember people saying that, like, okay, maybe one break or so would be good from this, but then they'd come back the next day and be like, whoa, Wreckage sounded fantastic today. And there are pieces of the song and like lyrical content again that works so well for what they're trying to put forward and put across. And the way that the harmonies come in at the end of the song, I think, are just beautiful. I think Josh does a phenomenal job with that, and a lot of the other main band members will go to the mics when it comes to that. But Wreckage is absolutely going to be a mainstay of tours going forward. If there is a song that is going to be used in 2028 when the next album comes out, I'm just kind of making a generalization there, I think Wreckage will be played a lot more often than maybe a song like Got to Give is played. And I think for that, you have to put it in good standing. And I think just, again, for being able to write a song like this and having it stick out so well and be kind of the emotional grasp of the album, I think is more than deserving of Uno Tiro, is Wreckage. All right, you guys. So now we go to the leadoff single from the record. That happens to be Dark Matter. When Dark Matter came out, I think we got these little bits and teases from different places, and we're like, oh man, like this really pops. Like this has a good progression to it. This feels like a good rock song, good simple rock song. And that's what it is. And I think the reaction to it, obviously being the first song and being a very, you know, just energetic and song that can kind of pump you up. It's a song in the latter stages where you feel like you can chant, you can scream to, which not a lot of the latter Pearl Jam songs you feel like you can do that with, but Dark Matter, I think, is a good example of that. I think people were so high on it because it felt like we understood what direction this record was going in. And at the beginning, we got Dark Matter, and then it took like a month for us to get another song, unfortunately. I think, unfortunately for that song, and I hate saying this because I do really still love Dark Matter a lot, I think people were just kind of like, okay, we've heard a lot of it, give us the rest of the record, And it took like 2.5 months before the record came out, and I think people were just really excited to get to everything else before seeing what Dark Matter brought to the table. And I was hoping for Dark Matter to be that big celebratory live song. The one where everybody can react to and pump their fist to. I thought it was going to be a massive one from the get-go. And it didn't quite find its footing until like a little bit later in the tour. I think, obviously, again, with the first 4 songs of the record being the ones that they ran through very early on in the set, I think when you got to the 4th song, you were like, okay, we know what we have here, and it's obviously going to be Dark Matter, and maybe that kind of loses a little bit of the luster. But also, I think the way that they were playing it very early on was they had a little bit of a tight grip on it. It felt like they needed to be a little bit looser with it, and the song kind of needed to have a fun aspect, and it was starting to, but like the crowd wasn't quite feeling the reactions back and forth with the band. And it wasn't until probably the second North American leg that it really started to take off, and versions started to feel powerful and started to feel like you wanted to be involved with the song. I never gave up hope on this. I was a little disappointed that it hadn't become what it become early on, because we were so familiar with it from the minute that we knew anything about the record. But I think that I still think it's a strong song. I know a lot of people would probably disagree with me. I'm like very close to wanting to put it in the first tier, but right now I am in between tier 1 and 2. Again, there's a lot of moving pieces here and a lot of decisions to be made. So, not firmly in number 1 or number 2 yet, but just something to keep thought on. So, still a great song. I don't think people should take this song for granted at all. Won't Tell happens to be one of the growers on me. Now, the next 3 songs off this record, easily my favorite sequence. When you get through Won't Tell, Upper Hand, Waiting for Stevie, it feels like the weight of those songs all together in a bunch just gives you a different feel for what's going on than the first 4 that feel a little bit more upbeat. Like there's more layers to these songs. And at first when I heard Won't Tell, I thought, okay, this feels very radio single to me. It's not the type of song that I gravitate towards right away. It felt like a U2 song, and I'm not a huge U2 fan. For anybody that's paid attention to any content that I put together over the years, I will say it, I'm not huge on U2. And it took me a while to love the song. Now, I liked it. I liked it enough, and I think there's an idea here that you like it because it's Pearl Jam, and you get into it because it is Pearl Jam, but you need some time to let it marinate and kind of let it sink into your soul. And I think it kind of came probably when I saw it. I think the first version that I saw was MSG, and I'm like, this is a good live song. This is a song that's meant to be played live. Just the pieces in it, and it's a Jeff song too, which doesn't feel like a Jeff song because Jeff songs are very sludgy, a little bit more downtrodden. You're nothing as it seems of the world, God's Dice kind of songs. React Respond feels more like a Jeff song than anything else on this record. Running also feels like a Jeff song, but Won't Tell you wouldn't necessarily peg as Jeff's. And it just brings in a different dynamic that you don't expect from this band because they're breaking out of their comfort zone for this record a lot. And I think Won't Tell is a good example of that. You know, it's very atmospheric. It has a lot of like little soaring parts that Mike has in solos and things, and it sounds very good, and I think that a lot of people have attached themselves to it. This is another one that's so hard to rank. I'm like, again, like, how many songs are going to be in between this 1 and 2 tier? I don't know. And that's where I think when we get down to the bottom of this and see where everything else is, then we'll find out. But yeah, that for now that stays there, and we have another conversation coming at a later date. So Upper Hand being next, I think Upper Hand was one of the first songs I absolutely loved off the record, obsessed with, just because the beginning was such a massive build into what the song would become. It kind of, brings you into it, and when Ed comes in with the guitar and gets really strummy with it, you start to kind of anticipate something big coming, and you anticipate the feel for the song, and then the lyrics are absolutely poignant, and the song takes you in all different directions, has this chorus that is elevated and kind of a little bit sorrowful, and then when you get to the end of the song, you're able to celebrate with the song and kind of understand that they're on top, they're going full force with it. And it's very similar to me to Lightning Bolt in that facet, how Lightning Bolt has that ending kind of, it's jubilant and rewarding is what it is. And I am not totally sure if they captured all of what the studio recording is on the live stage. It's a good live song that feels like it should be a great live song. And granted, when it comes to new songs, you always have to think, and Pearl Jam fans are much different than fans of other bands, where you like the main era stuff and then you taper off. I think most Pearl Jam fans, especially that are watching this, are probably like hardcore into every single album and know all the songs. That's just kind of, if you're part of the community, that's kind of who you are. So when you play a song live and it's a song like this, that it's like a 6-7 minute, maybe 8-minute live song, it takes a while to progress. Do you lose people? Kind of in the same way, did you lose people for 7 o'clock? Maybe you do. And I don't know if that kind of sunk the song a little bit, but it definitely works much better as a studio song than as a live song, and that's not to their fault at all. I think it's just based on everything that's going on. It's so tough to mix. I mean, the beginning, Josh has to run it back through all of his machines that he has back there, and it's kind of a pre-recorded thing, adding in little bits and pieces. Upper Hand, I mean, we have this purgatory right here that I don't know what to do with. But as we're putting this together now, I'm kind of getting a feel. Okay, which one of these three will make the number one? Now, with 5 songs left, I kind of have an idea which ones are going to be number one, which ones might be number 3, and then we can really start to deduct here. So, Waiting for Stevie is an easy answer for me. This feels like the song that is the one that captured the most attention. And McCready is such a huge factor to this band and this band's sound that anytime he gets to go off the rails like he did, and you got to think, like, Quick Escape is one where he got to go off, but like, how many did he go off on Gigaton? Not too many. You know, the Super Blood Wolf Moon solo was not really anything overtly special. Even the albums beforehand, what songs did Mike McCready just shred on? You know, you have to take a minute to think about it. But Waiting for Stevie, they let him go off. And a lot of credit goes to Andrew Watt, who clearly, if you watch him play, is mini Mike McCready out there. The way that he looks and the way he goes up to the high heavens and everything like that, he wants to basically pin himself as Mike. And it's a good person to kind of, tame your style after. But Waiting for Stevie also, the content of the song, I think, kind of came into light once the tour started to go. Every single night, we got to hear Ed tell the story, and if he's not talking about Stevie Wonder, he's telling another story where the song is about a young girl trying to find her community through music. And one of the things that I thought about during Ohana, he brings out his daughter Harper on stage and they play Last Kiss during Ohana. And during that, she's not singing the lyrics to Last Kiss. She's singing the lyrics to, I believe the song is called Perfect Day by Taylor Swift. A lot of what we know about Ed's daughters, musically, and what they're fans of, is that they are massive, massive Taylor Swift fans. And when that performance is going on, I can't help but think that there's a possibility that Ed is directly singing about Harper when in the content of Waiting for Stevie, about a girl who is looking to find her community through music. And you can see, like, it's a very simplistic song that relies on its choruses to flow and function. That's not a normal Pearl Jam thing. Pearl Jam is very intro, verse, chorus, bridge, solo, chorus. They have a standard structure they go through. And there's not a lot of songs in their catalog where they jump right into the chorus like that. But that's what they do in this, and I think that kind of captures your attention right away. And then, obviously, Mike does Mike things. And when you hear this song live, every single time that you get it, you're just more and more impressed by what he can do. This is a staple from this record. This is one that people have not stopped talking about. I mean, just a splendid, phenomenal late-era Pearl Jam song that is not going into purgatory. It's easily in the first tier of this song. So, Waiting for Stevie is just that good. So, next up here, this was kind of our anthem for the year in the community, because when this song came out as a single, we all went on a Zoom that night to listen to it together, to talk about it, to break it down and all that. And during the day, I was trying to write down what I thought were the lyrics to this song. And when it came to the part where they're obviously shouting something, I could not tell what it was, so I wrote down potato, and it stuck. It stuck, and everybody had a good laugh at the time, and I didn't realize how much people would gravitate towards it. I thought that it was just going to be sort of a little running an inside joke, but it turns out that, like, other groups in the community had the same thoughts and the same ideas, and Potato Mania just ran wild throughout the whole entire year. So there are clips in doing some of the documentary stuff where we're in Easy Street Records, it's Aaron and Javier and I, and the song comes on, and I put the camera on, and Aaron and I, in the middle of the record store, just go, potato! So we had a lot of fun with this song this year. It, from feminine and masculine potatoes and all of that nonsense that came in between. We made shirts. I still have a shirt back there. It's available on liveonfourlegs.com. If you still want a shirt, I have many. Probably not in all sizes, but if you want one, give a contact. So, outside of Potato, this is a fun punk song, real quick, gets you in and out, and has a ton of energy. The bass sounds fantastic on it. The chanting is obviously the fun part, but also when you're listening to it live, you can kind of imitate the running, and you can pretend to kind of run the place, and that's a lot of fun. It's a fun song. I don't think that it's a major song off this record. I don't even think that it should have been a single. I think that maybe there were some other songs that probably deserved that status. It is perfectly fine being a second tier song. Nothing wrong with that. Some people would have it below that. I think some people would have it in the third tier. Running and Potato. Look, we're always going to look back and have fond memories of 2024 and Potato. So second tier is pretty good for that. Now we get to something special. So this one, I think for a lot of people, and there's kind of a divide. I don't know if it's an even divide, but there's a divide over this song. People have different attachments to it. There are people that are just like, this doesn't fit within the Pearl Jam scope, that it's kind of a drop off from what Dark Matter was, and it dips back into more of what Backspacer and Lightning Bolt was. For me, those are probably my two least favorite records of theirs. So I get that, and I feel that. I don't have that same attachment to the song that maybe, dads and moms out there with daughters do. I have a son, and you can obviously pit that to any child in any scenario that, you care about their future, but really it's about Ed's daughters. It's a personal song for him. It's not about what we feel about it as much as it is what his family feels about it and what the rest of the band's family feels about it. And for that, I think it's important, but I don't think that this one's really going to stand up in the future when we hear songs from this record anymore. I don't think it's going to be one that we're going to anticipate on seeing. They didn't play it as much as some of the other ones from this record. So, and when I saw it, it was just kind of one of those like, yeah, all right, and enjoy it while it's here, but I didn't really feel an extra weight of energy to it. It kind of had, I don't know, for a while I was kind of thinking that it had a little bit of like Mama's Little Baby Glove, shortening bread kind of groove to it, which I was a little like, not my thing. It's a Josh song, and Josh plays guitar on it live. That doesn't make much of a difference, but just throwing in a fact there. I think that it's our first song to put in tier number 3, because I don't think it matches what we have or what we're going to have in tier 1 or tier 2 here. So, all right, last two songs off the record. Got to Give is one that I think it took me a while before I kind of felt the song. When we were in the movie theater and the song was playing, it was the only song where there was no lyrical content for at the beginning. Obviously they played the full record at first with nothing on the screen to kind of give you your own ideas of putting the images together and all that. And then the second time around, they showed the lyrics. And there was no lyrics from Got to Give, and that kind of took me out of the song a little bit. Kind of like, okay, well, that sort of takes me out of a connection there. And then it's not a song they decided to go back to live at all. They played it very, very early on in the tour once, and then way later in the tour one other time. And it sounded okay, but it didn't quite seem to stick. I know a lot of people that really do love this song, but I don't know if the band allowed us to get an attachment to it like we did with the rest of this album. I don't know if they were hiding something. I was going to say I think they were hiding something, but I think that they were a little bit hesitant to put this one in the forefront from some of the lyrical content or some of what the song is about. So for that, not a bad song at all, but I think it's kind of below some of the other stuff that we have here, unfortunately. I just didn't allow you to have the kind of connection that you should have had with it. But a lot of the lyric content, I'll be the last one standing. As I kind of mentioned before, some of the thoughts about Setting Sun, am I the only one hanging on? There might be a tie in there. So that's where we are right now, the closer to this record. Setting Sun, just changed the game when they were on the first leg. That first show in Vancouver, when we get to our bread and butter, the Alives and the Rockins and Ledbetter, you're like, all right, that's a pretty good first show. We got a lot under our belts. And the house lights are on for Ledbetter. And all of a sudden, everything goes off. Everything goes black. And we get the video screen back on. And we get into Setting Sun. And that in itself is not something that they've ever done. In the sense of not just like a fake out, but like giving the set a conclusion instead of a celebratory moment. It felt like every time that Setting Sun was used as a closer, you had closure to it. Because it's just one of those songs, and I think a lot of it comes from the way that they end the song, Let Us Not Fade. And that lyric is poignant within itself. All of the lyrics from the song are fantastic. Just hearing the song brings you to a place of not just comfort, but it brings finality to this band. If this was the last album that they put out, Setting Sun would be a remarkable way to say goodbye in their career. And I think so many people after that first leg missed out, that didn't go to the first leg especially, that they missed out on this being the closer and getting that feel for this being the goodbye to the night, because this is where the song built up its identity. Everything that the song gave to you was right there when they closed shows with it. And just perfect. Like the closing songs are in a very similar tier as the opening songs. I mean, you got very strong ones. Release, Indifference. I'm a huge fan of Parting Ways. I'm a huge fan of all those Yesterdays. You have stuff like River Cross, and you have The End and Future Days, which are kind of in the same category as Setting Sun, very poignant. And lest I forget, Inside Job, probably the best of the bunch. Gun to head, there's about like 5 of them that are best of the bunch. But Setting Sun is easily within that upper echelon of the closers. And with that, I think it's so simple to put this in the first tier. And there's a discussion to be had later. So, all right, this looks like a mess right now, but we're going to fix things. So, unfortunately, not something that I was planning on doing, but Scared of Fear is going to be in the third tier. But I think that just kind of speaks to how good the rest of the stuff is. So now we got to decide between Dark Matter, Won't Tell, and Upper Hand, which two are going to be in the first tier and which one is going to go down to the 2. And for me, I have a very tough time separating the sequence of Won't Tell, Upper Hand, and Waiting for Stevie, because they just mesh so well together. But I am still a huge fan of Dark Matter. I still think the song works. A lot of people are bitching at me for Scared of Fear right now, but you know what? It speaks to what this album is. A lot of people are saying that I should put Running in the third tier instead, but I'm not going to do that. Because fuck y'all, it's my list. But anyway, let's get back to the ones and the twos here. I feel like Dark Matter is still a first tier song. And if I were to put one of the two up a rung, I think I'd rather put Won't Tell than Upper Hand. So I'm going to move Won't Tell up to number 1, which if you told me back in April, I would have been like, no way. That's a third tier song for me. So that's huge increase of, enjoyability there. Again, a really tough list to make, but it's not for the live rendition. The studio one is so strong that Upper Hand has to be in the first tier to me. But man, Dark Matter is so fucking close, guys. Yeah. Yep. It's very tough to make that decision, but I've made it. Not a lot of you are going to agree with me, but that's all right. That's why we have opinions. We have opinions because they're shareable and we can have conversations about them instead of shouting matches, right? Right? Conversations are good. Shouting matches are bad. It just gets you angry. Okay, so with that being said, I think that because we had to decide whether or not they could be in the one, I think we're going to take Won't Tell and Upper Hand out of the running for S tier. So for our S tier songs, and I'll even put them way up there. This is a tough choice between Wreckage, Waiting for Stevie, and Setting Sun. Okay, the argument for Wreckage is that they played it every single night. It's easy to attach to. The lyrical content is, perfect for a late era Pearl Jam song. It gives you the homage to Petty without being petty. The case against it is maybe just falling into a little bit of the predictability line, but I think that's going to go away once we really depart from the identity of the Dark Matter tour. I think that this will kind of stand alone in a similar spot that maybe a song like I Am Mine did, something like that. Waiting for Stevie, the argument for is definitely Mike McCready. It's definitely just how the sound rings out and how great of an impact the song has live. The argument against, not a strong one. I don't have anything that would say it shouldn't be an S tier song at all. So I kind of stuck with that. But I think Setting Sun is transcendent. I think it's the one that if you were to tell the story of Pearl Jam through their music and had to give at least one song per era that tells you the story of who they are and what they're going through, I, without a doubt, would say Setting Sun is the one you take. Not only did it have an amazing impact live, I think a lot of people are still holding on to that idea that it was such a phenomenal closing song. And it's honestly, if I go back to listening to the studio record, which I don't listen to a lot of studio records anymore, I listen to a lot of live stuff because that's my intake. But I'll go back to Setting Sun on the studio side more than I will some of the other songs on this record. I think that's where we stand here. There are good arguments for both Wreckage and Waiting for Stevie, but I don't think those arguments are good enough because Setting Sun is the king. There you have it. Setting Sun is the S tier song. I think a lot of people that I'm seeing in the comment section while we're doing this live stream are saying they agree. So looks like, we found some common ground here, even though there were some things they didn't agree on. So third tier, let's just kind of recap everything here. Third tier, Scared of Fear, which was not agreed upon. Something Special and Got to Give. Tier 2 is going to be React Respond, Dark Matter, and Running. Dark Matter, I would have loved to get into the first tier, but not everything can be up there. That's the thing. You have to separate, and it deserves to be there, but, Won't Tell and Upper Hand do too. So, Tier 1, Wreckage, Won't Tell, Upper Hand, Waiting for Stevie. And then the S tier song, Setting Sun. There you have it. All right, thank you everybody for tuning in, and I don't want to stop doing tier lists. I think there's some other ideas out there. We can do tier lists of tour years, maybe instead of doing like the full year for 2024, maybe we can just break down each leg if possible. I think that could be an idea that we have. I don't know. Maybe we can do some posters or something like that, but I like doing these. I like giving you guys this content. It makes me think a little bit, and hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully you don't argue with it to the point where you're completely furious and don't want to listen to the content at all, because that's not what it's about. Everybody has different points. Everybody has different, takes and viewpoints, and, just, yeah. I'm not going to argue with you over what you think. So, there's everybody, I think this is a good list. So, I'll throw this out here now for anybody that's listening and you want to support the show. One thing you can do is you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also the way that you can support the show is by going in and donating. You can donate to our Patreon, where you can find on patreon.com/live on four legs. Just search for us and you join up and you get some perks. You get additional episodes that are outside of the normal episodes that we have on YouTube or on our regular podcast platforms on Spotify or Apple. There's lots of stuff in the can, and especially for those of you who go to a lot of shows, we do our reaction episodes every single time there's a live show. You will hear our reaction directly from site. And with a lot of the shows coming up, the Florida shows are going to be a lot of fun. I finally got tickets to those. I'm very, very excited to go to those, and I'll be at Raleigh too as well. But we'll have people on site for every single one of those shows. And that's a lot of the good content. We have Gear Garage episodes where Javier will go in and he'll break down songs and deconstruct them from what they're being played guitar-wise. We'll probably get back into Evolution episode stuff. We have Setlist Hangman, a lot of stuff. And if you decide you want to donate $1 a month, that's fantastic. But if you want to donate either $5 a month or $10 a month on either of those tiers, you will get an episode of your choosing. Any show that you've been to that we have not covered before that you want us to cover on our podcast for $5, $10 a month, if you join those tiers and you stay for a year, then you will get an episode of your choosing done and covered on the show. I think those are good perks. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the tier list episode. And for next time, we will, I guess, see you on the pod. I got nothing, but thanks for tuning in.